Hey everyone! So today we have such an exciting episode. We have Asal Naraghi, ADP's global innovation leader, and we have Maarten Hansson, founding partner of Workforce Insights. Now, here's why I'm so excited. For the past couple weeks, we've showed you what's possible and what the future can look like. Today, we're going to go over what is practical. Now, when talking about how to practically do a talent transformation, Asal and Maarten are literally the two foremost experts on this topic. Now, I met Asal probably over 5 years ago. She was at Philips leading their talent transformations. And one of her big wins, wait for this was absolutely incredible, is that when she was the Philips Global Head of Strategic Capabilities, she was able to deliver over 500,000 ventilators during COVID. So when we talk about the actual talent transformation and the actual impact of what talent leaders can have and what a talent strategy can have, I mean, that is one massive, massive win. Now, throughout this episode, we're going to be talking about how to drive change across the enterprise. And 4 things keep popping up that I want you to know about. The first was urgency. And so in the words of both of them, talent is challenged today more than it ever has been. So there is a general feeling of urgency. Second is that there is a new normal. And the way they put it is that talent is at an inflection point, no less greater than technology's inflection point. So listen, all of you probably heard about DeepSeek over the weekend. Well, if you don't have the right talent, your technology can't actually take off. The third theme we'll hear about is courageous leadership. So change is hard, we know that. And especially you leaders driving the future of work, the flexible workforce, you have to be really courageous. And last is we'll talk about partnership and collaboration. You can't do it all. Your vendors, your freelancers, whatever, everyone is a partner in this modern ecosystem. So I want you to sit back, I want you to enjoy, and then most importantly, go drive that change. Hey, real quick, before we get started, I want to give a shout out to Human Cloud, the company behind this podcast. When you think Human Cloud, think workforce consultancy. I know, boring. What that really means is Human Cloud is on the forefront of innovative work models that combine talent plus technology. We had our base in the freelance economy over 10 years ago, and since we've really been able to broaden every type of talent transformation that is digital first and flexible. So quick things about Human Cloud I need you to know. We have the largest database of flexible talent solutions. Go over to our website to find that database. Second, we lead the conversations, and we have an exciting couple of months for you. This podcast, a bunch of webinars. We have an emergency pod hitting on AI coming up. We have a big challenge where you platforms are going to pitch how to go from 10,000 to 100,000 for your clients. And you'll see us all over the globe in the next 12 months, from Munich to Singapore to San Francisco, you name it. You will see us. And if you're going to be in Austin at South by Southwest, we'll grab you some breakfast tacos. Listen, that's enough for us talking. Enjoy the episode. Asal and Maarten. Did I say it right? I'm going to get it wrong a couple times, but listen. But so thank you both for hopping on. Let's start by simply saying where in the world we are right now and where in the world we'll be tomorrow, because I know all 3 of us pretty much live on a plane again. But so, Asal, you probably have the coolest place right now and tomorrow and the next day. What does your location look like?
I am in Boston, and it is like, I don't know, 18 degrees or something like that. It's fine. The sun's out, and that's all that matters. I'm getting my vitamin D.
And what about tomorrow? Where in the world are you going to be on a flight to tomorrow?
I'm not traveling this week, but I will be in Zurich in a few weeks.
Knew it.
And if you have any travel tips or restaurant tips, let me know. Hotel tips. I'm going to be staying there for the weekend as well, personally.
And are you going to fly through Amsterdam? Because I was messing with Maarten. Amsterdam and Seoul are my 2 favorite airports based off the food. But so are you flying direct or what?
I am not going through Schiphol, although it is a great little airport. I will be direct.
Oh, man. Okay. Maarten, over to you, man. Where are you right now? What about next week? What's going on?
Yeah, it's quite straightforward to be honest. I'm just outside of a small 1,300 people village down south of the Netherlands, or down south in the Netherlands. And tomorrow I'll be on the high tech campus in Eindhoven, which is the Silicon Valley of the Netherlands, and the brain port. And that's where Workforce Insights, my company, is located. So yeah, all pretty close by these days.
Nice. And of the books, okay, you got an impressive book list right there.
Oh,
What is the percentage of them that you've read? Or is that fake? Is it a fake one? I got totally fooled. Okay, ignore it.
no,
What is
no,
that?
Real. Oh, it's
it's
real.
real. It's real.
Asal, did you think it was real or fake, or which one?
I thought it was real.
I
If you
thought.
know Maarten, he's always reading something interesting.
So, Maarten, which one's your favorite of those books, and what's the percentage of ones that you've actually finished?
Well, I have to say, I typically whiz through books, and I think at the moment my favorite one is Workforce Ecosystems. That pretty much covers what I live and breathe these days, and pretty much the last 8 years. So, yeah, I kind of like that one.
I love it. Okay, that dovetails perfectly into just rough intros on yourself, right? How would you guys describe yourself? You both have insanely impressive pedigrees. It's an honor to just have you on this. So, Asal, how would you describe yourself besides just, I always just say a badass person, but I'll stick to the So, how would you describe yourself?
So my background is in global HR and talent strategy, and I've worked at Fortune 500 companies. And then currently I'm working at ADP in our future of work practice, developing insights about what's happening in the world of work. I'm hesitant to even use the term future of work now because the future is now and we're living in it now. So I'm really helping to develop insights in the broader market as well as internally to help educate people on how to navigate the complexities of the modern business landscape now.
And how would you? So I know some of the cool stuff you've done prior, but I'm just gonna throw a little flag out there. You didn't exactly chill during COVID, okay? You weren't exactly just like sitting on your couch and chilling. But so, what are some of the cool things you've done in your past? And I think by me saying that, I think you know which one I'm inching towards. But yeah, give us a little bit.
Um, So back when I think Maarten, you were still working with me then, but I worked with a team to help deliver more than 500,000 ventilators for the global pandemic through the application of lean and agile practices into the recruitment process. So that's probably what a lot of people know me for. I will also just say Maarten and I have worked together in building a total workforce strategy for a very large organization, by which we enable executive leaders and HR leaders to have full transparency into their workforce, leveraging data sets from different platforms. So they have like a window to decide where they're going to build, buy, borrow, and as Maarten says, bot now.
So, okay, here's going to be two buzzwords for you listeners out there. If you're, getting confused, just remember these two things. So, a total talent strategy, but delivering 500,000 ventilators, right? Because one of the themes throughout this episode is going to be is the fact that I come from a tech entrepreneur background that didn't know what HR was, didn't know what procurement was. And whenever they did show up, I tried to go out the back door because I was scared and didn't want to deal with it. Right now, what we know is that the world of work is no longer just this kind of like cute little service org. Like this is critical, right? This is a business critical function. You need a seat at the table with the CEO. And you two are the 20% of HR leaders that really drive
True.
business results, right? So that's going to be one of the key themes that we keep kind of circling around is the fact that I am HR literate and I kind of don't want to become an HR expert because I want to keep learning from the 20% like you rather than sort of being biased by the traditional, right? So, Maarten, over to you. Good luck beating the 500,000 ventilators. I saw that was pretty mean by me. I should have had you go last, but Maarten, over to you, man.
Well, let me first start by saying I don't think I'm an HR professional or expert, or I think it's all about getting work done. And you, as a or anybody as in a small company or startup, they all do that consciously, or actually not so consciously, but by default, you make a very conscious choice or decision to hire a freelancer instead of hiring someone full time on the payroll. Or so you make conscious decisions on how you get your work organized and done, right? But the larger the organization gets, the more organizational structure you get, the more HR, procurement, functional silos you will get, and the more complex it becomes. And that's, I think, the sweet spot for me, because that all those problems around that area of corporates getting work done, that's where I'm thriving, so to say. But yeah, so in terms of the ventilator challenge, what was it that you're looking for from me?
Uh, just you know what? I think it's going to come out in the next 45 minutes. So I am not worried. I'm not worried one bit. We're going to dovetail into something exactly you just talked about, Maarten, which is getting work done. Okay. And this first segment is literally, why can't we just keep doing it the way that we've been doing it? And when we talk about talent, trying to make it tactical versus theoretical. So I'm going to ask a funny question. I'm going to go in reverse order. Maarten, I'm going to ask you first. And my question is, what is the dream state of talent management and what's the reality? And so to me, if it were a perfect world, right? If I had all the money in the world, there was no such thing as consequences and constraints, then to be honest, Asal, you know this, I'd have an office in Newburyport, just keep hiring people full time. And I really wouldn't care. I would hire like crazy, right? And they'd all be full time. They'd all be in an office in Newburyport. It would be so awesome. But
Mm-hmm.
the reality is, I can't afford everyone. When we have the people that are no longer suitable, I can't afford severance, and we can't afford the PR hit of if we do a massive layoff. And the people that I really need, meaning the cutting edge people, I'm struggling to find, and they're definitely not living 15 minutes outside of Newburyport. Unfortunately, unfortunately, right? So Maarten,
No, we're definitely not living.
unfortunately, so Maarten, for you, give us a quick dream state, but then give us the reality of where talent leaders and where talent is today.
Yeah, that's, I think, building on what I just alluded to, keeping it super simple and cutting out everything in between the demand of work or workforce and supply, meaning, or talent. So, meaning the moment you have a need to get some work done or activities or tasks, you put it into a chatbot, you throw it somewhere out there, and you immediately get a range of recommended solutions based on what is driving your need. If you don't have that much budget, then you have a different set of recommended outcomes to get your work organized than when you have a huge budget. For instance, is the need for the work very much long term, then you also get a different outcome or recommendation than if the work is just for a couple of hours a week or so. So it is really about um, leaning out everything and everybody in between demand and supply. That's my dream state. And then quickly flipping to the lay of the land today still. And that's and talking about it from an enterprise perspective. It is still managers that determine whether they hire someone on the payroll, whether they hire a temp, or they outsource a piece of work, and they hardly even know that they can actually upskill their already existing employees, or that people are benched because they don't have the visibility. So they are not really leveraging internal capabilities. They are unaware of the risks and the constraints legislatively around workforce. So, and they should not be. So, but we have organized now a huge beast of workforce management meaning HR, procurement for the external workforce, they're not talking to one another in principle. But and that's essentially the challenge that I talked about earlier, where I'm really getting enthusiastic and passionate about, and what Asal and I tried to start solving for several large organizations is to get the functions that are responsible for it talk to one another, talk the same language, and making it simpler in terms of process and system landscape for businesses to get work done.
I love that. So, dream state. Hey, I need to get 500 ventilators. Okay, here's what you should do. Right? Dream state. And then surprise, in 30 days there's 500 there's, 500,000 ventilators. Dream state. Reality, there's a lack of visibility. So that manager is having to decide, do I hire? Do I go, external contractor, or do I go outsourcing? And the reality is they don't have the visibility to, one, understand what's possible, understand what they should do, and we all know what they probably do is they do exactly what their boss did. And so if they're doing something strategically, they hire McKinsey, they hire Bain, they do a very expensive consulting project. Okay, if they're doing something execution, they go at the same agency that their boss used. And the reality is no one gets fired by hiring Accenture, right? So now we hit the constraints. Asal, for you, what is your dream state and what is the reality?
Yeah, it's a great question. ADP research sort of highlights that interactions with HR significantly enhances employees' perceptions of the workplace and also kind of reinforces the importance of HR strategic involvement in driving positive business outcomes. So if you ask me what my dream state is, it's a world by which HR and leaders are across the organization are sort of empowered to make more strategic decisions around their people strategy. And so how do we do that, right? It is enabled through large data sets that are compiled from various platforms I won't get into which ones. And then we use that data to understand the totality of our human capital. And by looking at it, we could say, okay, we have too much here, not enough here, or we need to move it here, or in our workforce strategy of the future that's enabled by AI. AI is sort of predictive modeling where we need to go in alignment to the business strategy. That for me is, what I consider Zen, although I might be a little inspired. I did read Sam Altman's blog from 3 years ago. So I'm feeling a little bit energetic about living in a world by which we have this approach to using predictive modeling and data sets to understand where our workforce strategy needs to be, and then using our human capabilities to apply this contextual understanding of it.
I love that. And I think two things that you guys are talking about that are, to me, actually seem very complementary, but also mutually exclusive a little bit. So, Asal, when you talk about that, my brain goes to, okay, I'm leading the Oracle division within my whatever IT outsourcing firm will say. So I'm leading the Oracle division. And I need to have 50 to 200 recs a month, or else I'm going to be missing out on 200 million of revenue. And so, boy, do I need the data to say, okay, I need 50 to 150 Oracle experts every month. This better be there. And the reality is, and I'm kind of talking about a specific leader, but obviously this is, everyone feels this. The reality is there's probably 376 open recs. There's a TA team that's burnt out, and you're just kind of making do with what you have. And so when I hear yours, Asal, I think scale. Now, Maarten, when I hear yours, I think that individual leader and the working teams, meaning mobilizing those working teams so that I only have to deal with one person or one resource. So I think the combination of Asal, you coming in and being able to say, all right, we need 35 Oracle developers over the next quarter, and Maarten saying, okay, here's who they are, or here's how we're going to get them. Now, let me ask both of you this. What are the biggest challenges that you're both facing right now? Because, Asal, what would you say when we get down to the reality? What's the reality of what's happening today? Are people logging into, or are CEOs and business heads logging into one platform, seeing everything and doing what you talked about? Or what are some of the biggest challenges, we'll say top 3 challenges, that you guys are seeing across all enterprises right now when it comes to talent?
I'll let you go first, Maarten.
Okay.
You both were like, on to you.
So, in my view, it's lack of visibility. Everything starts with visibility and understanding your, to Asal's point earlier, your available talent pools, and or solutions to get work organized. Because I think for me, the distinction between talent versus workforce and total workforce or total talent is talent talks about the people with specific skills. Workforce is a bit more agnostic. It could be a talent, it could be a person, but it could also be a combination of an outsourcing deal or whatsoever. So I think the lack of visibility of what you have internally to first optimize there, then to go external in your connected pools, and then to the broader world out there, that is really critical, and that's where data science, data engineering really can support, and that's where I feel that, well, that's the main reason for starting my company now. And then obviously it needs to be supported by the processes and the teams, because you will always need a bit more human touch to interpret the data and make the connection.
And it's all over to you. What would you say are the top challenges?
Yeah, so I've been really working on some thought leadership at ADP around this topic, and I have sort of identified like 5 sort of trends in people strategy or insights around people strategy, and they've come up based on the research that I've been reading, but also just the experiences I'm having by having conversations via my work at ADP with Fortune 10, Fortune 50 employers and the HR leaders at those organizations. And I think the first one that I see is this approach to the human-centered AI adoption. And so we are, lots of companies are jumping on the AI train in their people organizations, but then there is this sort of gap around how do we get the adoption around it? It's not having the sort of impact that they thought they would around productivity, which was the original goal. So I think the first is really about how do we have the right people and the right skills to adopt the technologies that are evolving at an exponential pace. The second one is really around change management capabilities and like how to from leaders, and how do we leverage those skills in leaders to help create sort of psychologically safe places for employees to be curious and explore, and not always just sort of worry about the backlash around making a mistake, right? And enabling teams without this fear of failure. Because when you excel in this approach, it really leads to driving innovation, also ensuring sort of like a balanced and sort of human-centric approach to the transformation. The third is really about future-proofing the workforce agility, right? And this is about, focusing more on the resilience of their teams, and which really enhances then the engagement of the team. So how do you do that, right? You really want to focus on building sort of this sustainable competitive advantage as you continue to sort of go through the journey. And it's hard, right? And then the fourth, which I think is relevant to this conversation, was really transforming HCM data into action and into a sort of competitive advantage. It's using the data sets that we have available to us. Most of Fortune 500 employers have these very sophisticated HCMs. They're hopefully using ADP. We do pay 1 in 6 Americans, and other large-scale platforms, but then they're not actually using the data to drive effective strategic workforce planning, to align workforce initiatives to business goals. And that is really the linchpin. It's about how do we evolve the capabilities within HR, which is the fifth sort of thing that I'm talking about, is how do we take our existing capabilities in HR and decide, is it fit for purpose now, or maybe it's not? And we do need to evolve our own capabilities in the HR organization so that we can deliver on things like data acumen and looking at sort of our literacy around that, process optimization by using lean or agile, or even more cross-organizational collaboration with procurement teams, with IT teams, so that we can deliver on the business initiatives.
I love it. So I have 2 questions for you, okay? And pick either one that you want. The first one is going to be, why can't I just go and hire everyone, right? Why can't I just go hire a bunch of full-time employees to fix this? Like, that's going to be my first question, right? And as simple as that. A second question, though, is then going to be, all right, how come we can't just pick a vendor to fix all this for us? And then third, if you want to be really bold, is in both of your experiences, right? So Philips, ADP, Novartis, you name it. When have you seen HR driven change really, really sort of drive the business and change the business? So those three questions, take your pick. You can pick one, you can go nuts and pick all three. But first is, why can't I just go hire everyone full time, right? And so I go back to this, like, why can't I just have an office in Newburyport hiring as many full time employees as I want, right? That sounds pretty easy and perfect. Second, though, why isn't there just one vendor to fix this all? And third, some examples of success. So you both figure out who wants the hot potato, but go. Whoever wants to take it.
Let me jump on it because I think you mentioned before that either you have your long-term, bigger demand, a longer plan, strategic workforce planning element or aspect, and then you also have your day-to-day, more transactional, role-by-role, task-by-task demand. I think the whole concept should apply to both. First of all, strategic workforce planning, if it happens at all, it only happens for 5% of critical capabilities and not in a very systemic way. And it's very often not translated also into clear build, buy, borrow plans, which are also executed, which answers your first question. The moment you would be able to translate that into clear plans, then your hiring manager would know, would be a bit more guided and directed towards what the best solution is for them to use, right? So the moment you are able to bring the data that we talked about in the transaction of the process for a manager on a day-to-day basis, then you pretty much do strategic workforce planning all the time, and it's always on, right? So it's finding that it's closing the gap between strategic workforce planning, then hardly anything actionable, and then a manager on a day-to-day basis at Novartis, it's happened 50,000 times a year that a manager pushes the button to initiate a request, right? So if you're able to, in a mandatory way, guide them intuitively through the process, the tooling, show them the data at the fingertips at the right moments in the transaction, then the assumption is that they will make first-time right decisions, and that you're set up for success.
Let me call something real quick when you mentioned, so you said two things, which was strategic workforce planning happens with like 5% of critical skills. And then you also mentioned that if you can intuitively guide the hiring manager through the experience. So let me just call out, this might be where the business versus the talent side, I do see a serious gap. So as a business leader, I am so lazy, right? And the more executive I get, the lazier I get, and I need a team of people to do, what I used to do myself. Now, when it comes to hiring, the last thing that I want to do is look at 20 to 50 different rules and source the talent myself and interview them. This is the last thing I want. Now, as the business leader, when HR or procurement usually shows up, it's usually saying, hey, did you follow, A through X, right? Or did you follow 1 through 30? And you go, no, okay, I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to do it myself, right? And then you go, okay, next quarter I'll worry about it. Next year we'll worry about this. So I do want to call out, I think that's one of the biggest sort of challenges that we've seen, is that a lot of the HR, whatever we want to call them, a lot of the HR entrepreneurs, a lot of the HR leaders, there's like that disconnect between the fact that business people are so lazy. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And I think I don't know if you guys know this visual of like UI, UX, where you have a walkway that goes like this, right? And it's like, here's what people think you do, and you follow this beautiful walkway. Here's what we really do. We take the dirt path, right? And I think HR, more times than not, when we get pulled in, it's because there's a business leader who has been doing the dirt path, meaning using a freelance platform or something else outside of their approved process, and they've hit like $1 million or they've hit 100,000. And then procurement HR goes, why won't they listen to us? And we're like, because your process is a pain in the ass. So
Exactly.
let that simmer.
fully recognize that, and I'm handing over to Asal to get your views there, Asal. But for me, it's super simple. You have to make the process as lean as possible, right? Between the demand, the business, and getting access to the talent. But if they are guided along the way, very intuitively and quickly to doing the right things and adding value to them rather than pushing buttons and frustrating them. That I think that's the key and the change management which needs to happen.
So, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think about like what are the barriers, right, to tackling sort of these evolving workforce strategies. And I think Deloitte did a study where they said that like 46% of the problem related to barriers with tackling developing a skills-based approach, which is one modern workforce strategy, rests around legacy mindsets and practices. So I think that's part of the challenge, is that we have legacy mindsets and practices, and it goes back to the point around HR really needs to evolve as a function to really build their capabilities around multiple avenues. Like I said, data acumen. The other one is really about collaboration. What Maarten is talking about is like, how do we build, and these are agile skills, frankly, how do we build more skills around customer delight, which is through agile, vis-a-vis working with different functions? Because what's historically happened is we stay in our silo and we don't want to move, and it is now resulting in a lack of ROI back to the business. And HR is really under scrutiny, and I would be surprised if anyone challenged that point, that they're under a lot of scrutiny to validate their worth and ROI back to the business on many levels. That's why you see a lot of cost optimization exercises happening within the organization. So I think that the root cause is this lack of sort of collaboration across functions, and how that's inhibiting their productivity and ROI in organizations. So it begs the question, well, why? Well, it's because we have these legacy mindsets and these approaches, and also lack the skills. So what now? This is why we really need to focus on upskilling or CHROs, and I would say heads of shared services. They need to take a look at our organization. I'm thinking of one particular SVP of shared services for a very well-known real estate company. And he told me that what they're doing is they're taking a look at their own workforce. And they're saying, okay, of this workforce, who can be upskilled and stay in role? Who can really identify themselves as maybe being capable still to work at the organization, but maybe not in this function? And there's about 10% of this lot that is not fit for purpose anymore. And that's okay. We have to love them and support them on their next step in their journey. So I think that's how I see is where the root cause of some of this stuff happens, is around our legacy approaches and a mindset that keep us from evolving, while also you see other functions evolving exponentially faster.
So I think that being okay with the 10% of people being not fit for purpose is a massive, massive soundbite, Asal, that I as a business person. So actually, it's kind of funny. I was having this conversation at the dog park with someone who, I'm just going to put it this way, 26-year-old, kind of millennial, still believe the world is all perfect and fair and getting very pissed off. But so my answer to them was, listen, I run a business. I'm actually okay with firing 10 people because I know I'm doing them a disservice by them being here. But it's really tough to say that, right? And it does require kind of having to do it before. So I understand when leaders feel like, oh no, I don't want to fire, I don't want to lay off. But I think your point is, like 10% of people might not be fit for purpose. Amazon gets rid of 10% of their workforce every year. They say it in a nice way so PR doesn't go crazy, but most good companies, they do get rid of, right? Now, I want to, in the spirit of legacy thinking, I want to give you a couple big wins and a couple really, really innovative use cases of how to use talent as a strategic advantage, okay? And then I want to understand how to make this happen in my company. And so I'm assuming, and right now you all are talking to either not the CHRO, but the person that is 5 to 15 years internal of their company. They do have some budget. They do have some power. but they don't know how to go from what I'm going to tell you to making it realistic in their company. Okay. So one example, there is, a top 3 food and beverage brand. Their HR lead looks at the APAC region, specifically digital marketing, and goes, this churn is way too high. What's going on? And how come in the past 3 years it's significantly amplified? They realize they need to embrace a flexible talent model. They build up a full infrastructure within 10 months so that they can fit in the borrow of the build by borrow aspect. Another one, big tech company. They realize their customer experience is crap compared to what it could be if they were leveraging 1,000-person, independent talent network to handle all the customer support tickets. They get a 75% profit margin. They've scaled it up significantly to the point that now people are buying more of insert Z products that they need because of the customer support. So those are 2 big examples. Actually, another quick one is a $4 billion a year IT outsourcing realizes they're down $256 million because they can't match talent with the projects that they've already won. They fill in a freelance talent program where every hiring manager can seamlessly access freelancers. And Maarten, to your point, they can see the talent that's available in a very easy way. So those are 3 cases, right, where those individuals have created massive wins. So in one case, they're able to source talent. In another, they're able to create a whole new sort of product and service line. And in a third, they're able to match revenue. Okay, big win, right? Every CEO would love to hear that. The reality is most companies haven't been able to wrangle their head around that level of innovative thinking, and they're stuck still in legacy thinking. So from both of your perspectives, and this is intentionally wide, right? This is intentionally a white piece of paper question. What the hell do I have to do to actually create change? Do I have to run to every single office in my company and just say, look at this case study? Do I have to go to the CHRO, find out where they golf, and just pester them? How do I actually create change with proven case studies of how to do it? How do I actually create this change?
Maarten, I want you to answer this because I know you went to a place and did this. So you helped create change in your organization. So I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, I think for me, everything related to workforce challenges boils down to pretty much 3. Well, one in the end, cost. Everything boils down to cost. Talent challenge also boils down to cost. Same with risk and reputational risk, etc. But cost, risk, and access to talent or retention of talent, that's pretty much where it boils down to. So depending on the company that you're in, one of my companies that I worked for the last 7 years had a cost driver. The second one didn't have any cost pressure. You can look at my LinkedIn profile and look at which one that was potentially. But they also didn't have a talent scarcity problem. But they were very interested in making sure that there was no reputational risk. Very highly regulated organization. So you always start from let's say an urgency or that workforce challenge, and then it's critical to find the right stakeholders. CHROs are very often not so interested when it's beyond employees. And when it's about external workforce risks or freelancer classification or whatsoever. So, and that's where procurement then steps in. But procurement is very often also organized in a very operational or transactional way and not so strategic. So you have to make sure that you start with understanding the stakeholder landscape, the challenge and the potential risk. And the moment you are able to then quantify that and sort of blow it up a little bit, that's where you need to spike the attention and get ideally the top-down support to start looking at a solution. What I learned at Philips, by the way, the hard way, is that you do need to take a step back and look at the root cause and the real problem and the 5 times why, because very often we are jumping on solutions without knowing the real problem. But that's my take on it. To start with.
I love that. So let me just really quickly summarize that before I go over to you, Asal. So from your perspective, you have to find the urgency. So step 1 is you have to find the urgency. And that urgency is usually along three drivers: cost, risk, and access to talent. Then you got to find your stakeholders. So you got to do your stakeholder map of understanding who is who. It might not be HR, it might not be procurement. And increasingly, from what we see, it might be a business person that has nothing related to talent in their job description, but talent is such an overwhelming pain now that they're willing to bite the bullet on this. So that's number two. Number three then is getting top-down support, which is crucial. And all throughout this, one of the biggest challenges you mentioned, Maarten, is if you don't deeply understand the first principle and you haven't done your 5 whys, then you're kind of like, I don't know, hopping on a rowboat without actually inspecting if there's a hole in it, right? So, Asal, over to you now.
Yeah, I think we're at this moment where it is changing because we're forced to change. From my vantage point, pain is the only way we can really force change, right? And I think historically, as people leaders or people function leaders, we've not been exposed to so much pain from a workforce perspective, right? There is a loneliness epidemic. There is people who are highly disengaged with their jobs, and it's disruptive not only to the day-to-day work, it's disruptive to the bottom line for CEOs. And one of the data points that I recall from Gartner was that there's 62% of CEOs' top business priorities were focused around growth. And that really dovetails into like, how do we drive growth? And that's via transformation of our workforce in a lot of ways. And I think that's where HR really, again, coming back to how do they elevate their strategic impact to the organizational strategy. They must give up focusing on what I would consider pretty operational or like low level functions and things that they're working on, and start to move up the work stream to better align themselves to what the organizational strategy is. Because what you'll see is that the organizational strategy for many companies is suffering because we don't have what Maarten's talking about. And there is a large push right now. I think like Josh Bersin said that 75% of HR organizations are either going through a transformation or planning to go through a transformation or already did. And all of this is coming from the fact that we need to drive more change through transformation to deliver on organizational strategy. And HR, or people function, they are the supreme exemplars and the czars to how we guide the people ship, right? So I think that's how we drive change, is one through the pain that's being created at the top, and then having our HR leaders begin to align more strategically to deliver on an organizational strategy for the benefit of our shareholders, our any of our stakeholders in the market, our vendor partners, all of that stuff.
Gotcha. And so when you mentioned, how'd you say this all? Basically, it was like, we've never dealt with this much talent pain. So I will say that is something that I have noticed since, and I think just a quick, not to get too into the weeds, but 2012 I was freelancing. I was independent consulting on my own. 2016 I was at a venture-backed startup doing custom software dev through a freelance network, and never ever dealt with HR or procurement. 2018 rolls around, jumped to a Fortune 500. I was at Microsoft. Then all of a sudden it's, oh no, procurement, HR, all these terms that I just seemed so not even business relevant. And to be honest, in the past 2 years, it has felt like HR leaders are talking more business-like. And I'll be honest, from 2020, during that, it did not feel like we were talking about business. It did kind of feel like we were talking about kumbaya, a bunch of stuff related to making like employees' fingers not too hard. Like I remember on one of my interviews, they were like, check out these tree houses. And my response to them was, this is the stupidest. Why are you wasting money on tree houses? I'm not this fluffy. I don't need a tree house, right? I want more money. I want to make an impact. So it does feel like HR is becoming more strategic. Now, from both of your lens, and this I think is a little more of like a quicker discussion, and that is, what are some of the buzzwords that you are noticing when you're at the conferences, when you're talking to the C-suite, when you're talking to CHROs? What are some of the buzzwords that everyone can rally around? One thing that I have been hearing in the past 3 months is we have been hearing about like a systemic shortage because of birth rates, immigration, and just overall macro conditions. I've heard that a couple different times. I think in 2022 we did hear things like the Great Resignation that everyone got behind, and then that kind of ended quickly, right? Nothing, inflation kind of ruined that. But so when you're at conferences talking with CTROs, what are some of the buzzwords that you guys are using right now of just kind of like that brain share of like, oh yeah, I know that you know, but what are some of those buzzwords?
Skills is obviously the one which is used everywhere at the moment. Skills based hiring but the operationalizing that and putting it into practice is quite difficult. I always say if you it's hard to run when you can't even walk. So if you can't even get your processes in order, talking about filling roles or understanding what people actually do in your current organization based on a job architecture, let alone do that on a skills gaps, skill prediction, etc. So I think skills is something that is buzzing for some time now. I think the pandemic, by the way, did bring that pain that Asal talked about earlier and helped accelerate a lot of positive change, because I definitely also want to throw in a few positives, being a very positive and optimistic person. You do see that HR is stepping up, maybe because they're forced, but because of the fact that more and more people and talent is not interested in coming on the payroll and do want to have that agility and work as a freelancer. Someone needs to start allowing that to happen in organizations. Otherwise, you won't be able to access the talents that you need. So gradually, you see that HR is stepping up and also looking more and more at freelancers and temp workers and contingent labor, which is a really good starting point. But looking at the overall workforce strategy beyond just talent and employees, I think many organizations have a long way to go, or to put it more positively again, have a massive opportunity to invest in a more holistic, integrated view and approach.
I love it. So it reminds me of one of there's a leader in France who was an early sort of executive at Salesforce. And I know we kind of like assume right now, like, hey, Salesforce, yeah, like obviously you know about it, right? But going back to the early days, the CIO, CTO, CRO that was willing to say, we're going to give a try to cloud-based CRM management, that person looked crazy, right? Like that person looked like they were risking their job on a nit, right? And it's in this crazy thing now. You're like, well, duh. Obviously, we need Salesforce or some sort of. Like, what do you mean we don't have a cloud-based CRM? That's just.
I'm always surprised when I hear about people still having things on premise.
Yeah, right. So
weird.
For some reason, from a talent perspective, it just hasn't followed that, right? From a talent perspective, it's still like, oh, that's that crazy flexible talent person. That's that crazy gig person, crazy freelance. And I know we can all, from an industry perspective, at least for me coming from it, we've made it more confusing because we keep throwing new buzzwords every 6 months. We're like, hey, it's gig. Ugh, that one didn't land. Hey, it's freelance. Maybe. The new one's, now it's fractional, right? Hey, it's fractional. But so Asal and Maarten, I think the skills-based buzzword is something everyone can rally around. We've been hearing that as well. Asal, what would you say is the buzzwords that you are kind of brain sharing when you're at conferences and with CHROs?
Yeah, there's so many. What I have heard maybe last year is really about how do we define productivity and then capture that in some way, shape, or form. In fact, we're seeing sort of an uptick in folks being interested in our time solutions at ADP. And a lot of people have been like, well, why is that? And I'm like, well, because time is directly related to the accountability of effort and productivity that workers are putting forward. So I'm not surprised that that is a solution that many of our customers are interested in purchasing from ADP. The other thing that I really am hanging on to is about a workplace autonomy. I think it is a macro trend that is happening right now in which multiple activations of it come in under it, right? So we talk about a freelancer workplace, or we talk about 4-day work weeks, or we talk about RTO, or we talk about all these things, and these are all buzzwords, but when you take a step back, they all fit under the concept of workplace autonomy. And I really believe that that is where, we have to go in the future, or even just now. It's that workplace autonomy is a function of enabling trust with workers, and trust is really develops motivation and commitment. This is another piece that just came out last month in our ADP research. I think it's an interesting point about how do we drive workplace autonomy, and new technologies are becoming better at replicating sort of the functional and technical aspects of work, but there's not a lot of differentiation, and the ones that are doing this will excel in the future, which is around how do we help, how do we come from what humans do and evolve it to not just with through technology, but together with technology. And that is done through the enablement of like workplace autonomy in a lot of ways, right? So AI is capable of creating a lot of things, but this ability to sort of expand into leveraging technology to enable workplace autonomy is what I think is a competitive advantage, right? The drive for autonomy is a way to maximize productivity while engaging talent, that it aligns sort of like widely to motivation, right? So those are my sort of thoughts around it. If I really want me to get into it, I can talk about self-determination theory and how the three functions of it are really autonomy, competence, and relatedness rather, and that is what drives employee motivation, right? So if you think about the autonomy component, this is where all the stuff that we're talking about comes into play to deliver on an agile workforce that will deliver on revenue and productivity.
So I love the word autonomy, and what from hearing both of you for the past almost hour now, what really comes out is that, and I'm going to give you from the business person side. I love looking at user data. I love looking at product roadmaps. I love looking at sales forecasts. I love that. Talent, not so much. Even though I don't know if you guys, I was supposed to be a psychology major, but I looked at it and said, there's not enough money here. And the reason I tell you that is because your talent leader is the one you need to always have next to you to help you understand how to motivate, mobilize, and keep the talent that you want, and increasingly acquire the talent that you don't have, right? But what's becoming increasingly clear with you two, and that I think we're going to see, one of the big trends we have for this next year and next 5 years is business leadership and talent leadership merging, and trying to find the hook of like, why should the business leader care about the talent leader? That's something that business leaders never going to be good at, right? Really deeply understanding their talent from a psychological perspective. The business, we shouldn't care about that, to be honest, because you guys will always be better at that. Now, my last question for both of you, okay? And then we're done. First, it's going to be, where can our listeners find you? Second, it's going to be, what is one quick tip that you have for the guy or girl in sweatpants that loves bits, business plans, roadmaps, and is a total just business person? What can we do to get you to love us? And it could be as simple as buy us a coffee, send us a Christmas card, or whatever it is. But so first question is just, where can we find you? Second question is, how can we get you to like us business people? Go.
So I'm not sure if I understand the second question. So yeah, you got to help me out a little bit.
Maarten, I'm the CEO of Novartis. How do I get you to love me? What is one quick thing that I can do today, tomorrow, next week, next year? What is one quick thing? And I'll give you the bit from a business perspective. Give me the data on how this lack of talent is really leading to hurting my bottom line. Specifically, give me the stat that if I'm 6 months behind on shipping, revenue goes down by 50%, and 45% of projects don't go off on time because of talent.
So for let's say potentially interested candidates or talent for my company, right, to attract them. That's the question, right?
No. Actually, I'm so glad you asked. No, as the business leader that doesn't know how to work with talent leaders, we don't know how your brain operates, right? We literally, it's like two foreign worlds right now. What can we do? And maybe it's as simple, Maarten, as go and grab lunch together, right? Go and grab lunch consistently once a week or once a month. But what is one tip to get both of our worlds, the business and talent world, to really, really come together and merge and work together? What's one quick thing that you would say, hey, start doing business person?
Yeah, it's literally asking to make a business impact, right? To solve a business challenge or a business problem, and that's what I feel enabling functions should always do, but very clearly are not always capable of doing. The business, the moment they indeed are able to make a use case very crisp and concise, that is where it becomes very practical but you need to start having the conversation, and I think the issue will always be that the moment I make that plea to a procurement lead or to a HR lead, then both of them, the moment they stay in their silos, and it's a bit more a bit longer answer than because it's not such a simple challenge. Because I think the big issue is that the moment you are in an HR world, you won't step across the boundaries to other functions to help jointly solve that business challenge, then it will never happen. So very lengthy answer, but yeah.
No, I love it. So break the silos by making the business case clear and coming together, right? And coming together through the clear use case. I think you nailed it. And Maarten, where can our listeners find you? What's your LinkedIn website? You name it.
So workforceinsights.ai, that's the main starting point for embarking on a total workforce journey. You can find me on LinkedIn or connect via the website.
I love it. Okay, Asal, over to you. Where can our listeners find you? And I've been waiting for this, Asal, because so I'm gonna give you a little. So it's beyond the boring business professional side. If you really want to woe Asal, what is the eagle called, Asal? The beautiful Persian eagle that when my father-in-law has a big old belt with it on, it looks really cool. Yeah, there we go. Exactly. Find that in gold. It has to be gold. It can't be silver. Persians do not like silver for some reason. But find that. That's my one hack for any leader that wants to really wow Asal. Find something in gold. Ideally get the eagle. And if you're at a conference and you see her, I guarantee you, Asal, that you'll be like, yeah, let's totally grab coffee. But make sure there's some golden eagle. But so, I've been waiting months to say that, Asal. But so, over to you. Where can our listeners find you? And then, what's the one thing that business leaders should be doing to get closer with their talent leaders?
Yeah, so you can find me obviously on LinkedIn. I'm active on there, Asal Naraghi. I will be speaking at our Global Rethink conference at ADP in Switzerland in a month. So if you're someone who is going to that as one of our top sort of prospects or customers at ADP, I'll see you there. And then also our Meeting of the Minds conference, which is a massive conference that ADP hosts in Las Vegas. And we'll be there in March. So I'm very energized to be there. I'll be at our executive portion of the conference, speaking on the main stage about the evolving HR operating model and how to stay agile in the workforce of the future. So good. I would just say, how do we get people to love you? Your question is really, for me, it's going to be from an HR lens, but I think it's applicable to any function, right? Whether it's procurement or IT. It's really about how do you have to demonstrate your strategic impact on business outcomes. So that's how you do it. You have to align whatever your stakeholders' goals are, and then start to deliver impact on those outcomes. And if you get more granular, I would just say an activation of that could be, HR business alignment scorecards, where you sort of implement shared performance scorecards between HR and the business units to tie these people initiatives directly to revenue, growth, and productivity metrics. This is sort of the evolution of where HR needs to go and is going in many instances. And I also think it's about leveraging technology and doing the investment around technology for strategic workforce planning, or for tools like Maarten is producing, where you invest in the workforce planning platforms to provide these sort of predictive analytics to inform headcount decisions, scenario planning, and reskilling strategies, which again go back to delivering on the business outcomes that leaders are looking for.
I love it. Okay, you two, thank you so much for hopping on. Listeners, go reach out to them at the Gold Eagle. If you're in the Amsterdam airport, message Maarten, see what you should get. Go to the Amsterdam Bread Company. Best airport, best food. But all right, you two, thank you so much for hopping on. Let's go kick ass in 2025.